Hello everybody and welcome back to the Overlap Breakdown. Now today I am joined by Josh Williams, who is an analyst for RedmenTV and Anfield Rap and also does a little bit of writing for himself. And if you don't know who he is, please be sure to go and follow him on all socials. I'll leave that at the top of the description. But today we're here to cover Liverpool versus Manchester United, which is one of the biggest games in terms of turning points of the season. All right, Josh, welcome to the channel. Good morning. And yeah, I just wanted to, say it's nice to have you on the channel. Obviously, we spoke about you a lot with Patrick and stuff, and we really wanted to get you on the show. But I just wanted to ask you, just right off the top, what do you make of Liverpool as a fan, sort of this season, after the three games you've had? Not just the three games you've had, the season in general.
It's a difficult one, really difficult one to analyse at the moment because if you look at the landscape, it looks relatively healthy. You know, you've got. I probably would have taken this at the start of the season.
Yeah,
a point behind Arsenal. We've had a tough start, but if you actually look at the stuff under the hood, I don't think it's that. I don't think it's running that healthy.
No.
I think there's some teething problems in there. Obviously, there's a lot of turnover when it comes to the squad. Lots of new incomings, but also crucially a few key outgoings as well. Naturally, that's going to take a bit of time. But it's hard because I don't want to come across as a typical top six fan who just expects constant wins. But there's elements in there of like, I don't like the look of that, and I think tactically as well, which is obviously the theme of this show, I'm not sure what the solution is the key part.
Yeah.
I'm not sure where you go with it because you've got a lot of players who, if they don't start, it's a talking point, it's a story. So usually someone ends up on the bench. Who's that going to be? I mean, you've got a load of £100 million players in there. So yeah, there's lots to think about. Really.
Do you think United fans are, obviously, like I'm sort of leading the bandwagon on this, but do you think United fans are actually right to be optimistic going into this game? Because I'll say it right now to people who are watching this. A lot of people think I'm like an incredibly negative Manchester United fan, and to be honest, I don't know how you can really blame the pessimism. But in this show, because you're a Liverpool fan, you're from Liverpool. I'm Manchester United fan, I'm from Manchester. It feels like I've really got to back my team's corner in this one because I'm not gonna lie. I watched the game back at Anfield last season, but this week, and I was like, oh, I can maybe see one or two things, and we will go into sort of what they look like. But for me, do you think Manchester United are right to go into this game optimistic without having won at Anfield since 2016?
Yeah, I'd say this is a really good time to play Liverpool. Sometimes on the back of a top side with an elite mentality, playing them on the back of 3 losses, you would expect, a fight back or whatever, and a reaction or whatever you want to call it. But the issues haven't really stemmed from mentality; they've stemmed from tactics and things like that. So,
well, the mentality's there to see, isn't it?
It
goes.
Exactly. But the tactical issues, I mean, Slot has had 2 weeks to sit on it and think about it. But this is definitely the period where if you're going to face Liverpool at Anfield, get it out the way now. Yeah. I think we might peak towards like March maybe, like PSG did last season.
Yeah.
But I did a podcast recently with a mate, and he labelled this kind of period as our period of maximum vulnerability. He said, if we get through this, maybe up until the next international break, and we're still in touch with the likes of Arsenal at the top.
Yeah.
I think we'll be I think it's absolutely take that.
Yeah, because it's got to click at some point. It does feel like we mentioned this when we were talking about all Liverpool's signings. We were like, there's too much talent to fail. Obviously, it depends what you class failure as. But I feel like there is actually just too much talent to not win a big one this season. Do you know what I mean? I feel like if you look at the heavy hitters in the league and sort of the players they've got, and you compare that to sort of Liverpool's hitters, and I know there's obviously a history of like the Galacticos and stuff like that, but I think in the Premier League, especially when there's Premier League proven players in that team, it feels a bit different.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned the Galacticos there. There's shades of Real Madrid in there, with like, the makeup of the squad. There's a lack of balance a little bit, and when it comes to, when Liverpool sign a player, my first thought is always, why are we buying them?
Yeah.
What's the plan? Yeah. And looking at what we've done, I'm not entirely sure what the plan was aside from sign a load of worldies, basically.
Yeah.
Like Real Madrid have the issue with Vinicius and Mbappe over here, or had it. They signed Beckham when they had Figo down here. Got in the way, but Real Madrid, as you say, had that really high floor with the talent. So you still win a ton of games, but tactically it can look a bit ugly sometimes.
Yeah.
And I would rather that didn't happen.
This segment is brought to you in partnership with Football Manager 26, where their new In Possession system gives you a new idea of how to set your team up on the ball. And today, we've obviously got Josh Williams with us for the Liverpool Manchester United preview. And straight away, I want to throw this onto you just by saying, what have you made of Liverpool's sort of changes in dynamic in personnel on the ball? What you think has been the positives and the negatives of your team this season on the ball?
Well, it's consistent. I mean, where do you start, really? I think on paper, Liverpool have now got, you could argue, more dangerous players. I think Capitalise is really threatening, obviously, based on what we've seen at Bournemouth. Frimpong is, in my opinion, not even a fullback. You know, he's a forward at times under Xabi Alonso and under Arne Slot as well, at Galatasaray and stuff. Florian Wirtz, you know, master of a number 10, or can't, you know, playmaking type in small pockets. You've got Isak, who is one of the league's best forwards. Then his backup is Hugo Ekitike, by the way. So you've got a lot of really dangerous players that Liverpool have added. And in theory, you would think more goals, more chances created, that sort of thing. But so far, it hasn't really worked out that way. I mean, straight off, you know, when it comes to build-up, I think you've got problems in the full-back department. I think Capitalise is really good in the final third. And he's got a good cross on him and stuff. But when it comes to building the game from the back, I expected a little bit better, maybe. I think you see the value of Robertson. Robertson's a really good passer. You associate Robertson with running, don't you? Like you think of overlapping, marathon man, that sort of vibe. But he's not really. Well, he is, but he's also just a passer as well. I think with Capitalise, when Capitalise has been on the ball, he almost telegraphs a little bit where he's going to feed it, and it's usually inside, and it's easy to predict. Right back is the big one. Obviously, you've lost since Alexander-Arnold, literally a quarterback for the team. You know, an avenue into the final third like that at the drop of a hat. He also found Salah all the time, which is not happening this season. I think Salah's had fewer touches per 90 this season than any other season for Liverpool. Florian Wirtz as well is a bit of a different number 10 to Szoboszlai. I expected Wirtz to just be a seamless fit. You've got maybe like a 2 last season where Szoboszlai was kind of there. You had a bit of a staggered midfield, and Szoboszlai mainly stayed there, I would say. This season with Wirtz, he's a bit more of a swimmer, is the term I use. So he's over here if the ball's over there, he's over there if the ball's over there. He's helping with build-up because these guys have no interest in doing it.
Well, to be fair, we covered Wirtz on the channel, and I think one thing we noticed is we compared the per 90 stats from Wirtz from Leverkusen to Liverpool, and the one that was up by a considerable margin was actually the passes in his own third rather than passing the final third and stuff. So I think there's definitely an angle where Liverpool are trying to sort of change on the ball. I think one of the things that I've not really seen it spoke about, but when you was just reeling it off, I think one of the things that we've seen in the Brighton game last season, I keep referencing this game, but this was when the fullbacks started to make them sort of diagonal runs in here. And I remember you actually went to more of like a flat three in midfield with Gravenberch sort of splitting in between. And I think that obviously suits sort of getting these new style fullbacks in them high and wide positions. And I think if you actually flipped it and you put that shape up against Manchester United where you pin the fullbacks back, so if you play with that sort of forward 5 against Manchester United, I think you can already sort of see how Liverpool can overload that defensive line with 5 across 5. But then you've also got 3 in the middle, taking advantage of the 2 in the middle. And I think it gets you sort of the fullbacks that you were speaking of before, like high and wide in the attacking areas. But then you also get that sort of 3 in midfield that balances it out. And I think, I don't know, that's where I've looked at Liverpool and gone, that surely has to be sort of what you move to consistently.
Yeah, well, when Liverpool signed those 2 fullbacks, I kind of envisaged, I painted a picture in my head where they're both kind of like vehicles to get you from here to here, basically.
Motors.
So don't give them the ball when you expect them to pass. Give them the ball when ideally they're the free man, they're the spare man, and they can go. and you can carry it like road runners, basically. And the way in which Liverpool did that at the back end of last season when we'd already won the league and we were able to trial things, as you say, is Gravenberch dropping in, the two centre-backs going really wide and the full-backs really advancing. And then in that kind of scenario, the build-up is being conducted by the two centre-halves, Gravenberch and maybe Wirtz and, you know, McAllister or whoever it is, and the full-backs are kind of, as I said, just vehicles, really. But one of the problems we've had is Gravenberch missed the first game through suspension, Frimpong got injured, Bradley also got injured, Szoboszlai's been playing right back, so you don't really need to do this with Szoboszlai.
Yeah, because he's not there, is he?
Yeah, so we haven't seen it as much as I expected, but maybe this is a game to bring it back. You know, we can match up Man United a little bit with the whole back three thing. You'd certainly get more out of Frimpong in that kind of dynamic. Liverpool have got lots of options, but so far this season, it feels like if Man United have the can I say balls?
Yeah, go for it.
to press Liverpool high.
Yeah.
This season, I would say you potentially get inroads through doing that, just because Liverpool are still finding ways to get out their own half without Trent and things like that.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I've noticed with Liverpool this season is sort of the more demanding ask of the midfield in terms of they're now becoming the guys who lead your build-up, rather than obviously you could have it last season where Trent was leading it, Van Dijk was leading it out of the back, down the right-hand side, keeping sort of Salah high. And I think
Robertson was key as well.
Yeah, Robertson. I think I mentioned this on one of the other ones, but you tweeted that graph of Liverpool's most progressive passes last season per 90. And I think 3 out of 4 of them are even, you know, up for selection and stuff like that. So I think it's definitely a change in Liverpool and definitely a change where the progression's going to come from. But maybe this is the game where we can sort of see Arne Slot's the newer idea of having the runners out wide outside the wingers. And yeah, it's going to be a very interesting one. But please don't forget to obviously purchase, if you are interested in football tactics, Football Manager 26 out on November 4th with their brand new player roles and in possession system on this year's game. So I just wanted to, go on into actually analysing the game and previewing the game. So Liverpool have lost just one of their last 14 Premier League meetings with Manchester United, a 2-1 defeat at Old Trafford in August 22. Indeed, since the start of 18-19, this is the fewest defeats any side has faced the Red Devils 3+ times in the competition. So obviously, the history of this fixture has been pretty gruesome for me. But as I said before, I have got a little bit of optimism. Now, I'm going to just show you sort of the one thing that I've noticed that I think could be a real big thing for Manchester United in this game, and I want you to sort of caveat it by saying whether or not you think it's realistic. So I'm going to show you that in build-up with Manchester United, what we've often spoke about on this channel is the middle centre-half pushing up, the wing-backs being a bit deeper, and then you can create this somewhat, 4-3-3, if you like, in the build-up. Now, Liverpool this season I've been pressing in somewhat of a 4-2-4, or they have done under Arne Slot for since he's arrived, really. And one thing I've noticed quite a lot is the persistence on having a 2v1 against the centre forward and the fullbacks initially staying quite deep, and then depending on the ball side, the fullback will then push up. So that means that the wingers sort of narrow. So say the ball is played to the centre half and he gets it. Again, we're looking to jump straight onto them and sort of restrict the passing lanes. Now, one of the things that was highlighted against Chelsea was obviously this reserved approach in going man-to-man across the pitch when you can get 3 bodies in the centre. I think it was obviously Moises Caicedo in the Chelsea game who sort of got into this hole. And then, I think, do you know what was funny? I watched the game back and I think you can hear Slot shout Ibu to tell him to step up. So I'm not sure whether or not it's like a situational thing. Yeah. But it was definitely sort of, Van Dijk definitely had the better angle on the centre forward, and I think it was sort of Konaté's man to step in and join up. Now, against Sunderland, and well, virtually since Brian Mbeumo and Sesko have sort of been playing, they've been playing really close together. So obviously having this sort of 2v2 against Liverpool's 2 defenders, but then also I was wondering if we could pin the fullbacks backwards. So instead of having this player here, can we actually push on the wing-backs in sort of Amad Diallo? And I think when you can get that box in midfield, you can obviously have Mbeumo and Sesko asking the questions of the centre-halves. And I think just in general, having a build-up that looks something like this, especially like a 4-2-4 or a 4-3-3, sort of getting in and around Liverpool's midfield, I think you can ask questions of sort of their man-to-manness in the back line and sort of their arrivals into the press, because I think against Chelsea, I think there's just signs for me in Liverpool that their press is a little bit more, you know, when we speak about Jurgen Klopp and we're talking about sort of heavy metal, it does feel completely different in terms of the aim of the press, doesn't it?
Yeah, I agree. I think if you look at Liverpool's press since Slot came in, you're spot on with what you've said. You know, it's largely been for me a 4-2-4. And Slot prioritises having a +1 at the back. So his centre-halves never really get dragged particularly wide. Like under Jurgen, you had Canate down here sometimes, you had Virgil up here sometimes. Under Slot, it's a lot more the centre-halves are within the width of the penalty box, really. So that's your perk. But at the top side, when you're pressing high, I think one of the reasons it worked last season was because this player was Dominic Szoboszlai, who can essentially do the run with 2 players. That's his biggest perk. He's so athletic, you know, he can do it three times a week and he's relentless with it. But so far this season, Szoboszlai has sometimes been here. Sometimes he's been in the midfield department, and that's been Wirtz. Now, Wirtz covers ground, but he's not quite Szoboszlai. It's like taking Kante out and putting in someone who can cover ground, but is not just a freak when it comes to it. So I don't think Szoboszlai will play here in this game, and that should give Manchester United the ability to outnumber Liverpool in the build-up and then progress, because that is what we've seen at times this season, and it results in Liverpool retreating into a bit of a mid-block, which Liverpool are comfortable doing under Arne Slot. We don't, you know, we're not quite as good as Arsenal in it, but it's not like if we were in a mid-block with Klopp, it was a bit like what's this? What's going on? Unless it was Manchester City away or something. But with Slot, sometimes you do accept, okay, the press will get beaten. The next tick box, if you want, is right, form a block then in the middle of the park and hopefully don't get beaten anymore. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how Man United do it. I mean, one question I do have for you is, do you think he'll build from the back at Anfield?
Well, it was funny you actually said this, because obviously there was a massive thing after the game that I think a lot of United fans were like, oh, we've actually gone to Anfield and played a little bit better than, well, I think everyone thought we were going to play there. And I think Slot said after the game, we went long with virtually every goalkeeper kick. Now, used it? Yeah. Now, we did actually go along with pretty much every goalkeeper kick. He is right in saying that. And I think now I'm looking at it, and I'm not sure how you, obviously, I think Canate and Van Dijk, especially in the duels, are 2 of the best centre-halves, like probably in Europe, at sort of keeping up with the duels. Now, in the same respect, I can count on one hand how many headers Benjamin Sesko's lost this season already. Like, he doesn't seem to really lose that many headers. And I think we mentioned when he signed, the stats were the amount of flick-ons he plays and the amount of sort of first-time passes he plays off the long ball. And then Brian Mbeumo's actually made the most off-ball runs of any single United player this season. And we saw it for the penalty that we won against Chelsea. This sort of spinning behind and then this flick-on from Sesko, especially if he's a little bit deeper and asking the question of the centre-halves to jump out. That's where I'm looking and going, could that work?
Yeah, I think Liverpool in that situation, I've seen that happen a few times myself. With Man United, that is. I think with Liverpool are actually well equipped to cope with that. Simply because Mbeumo plays on the side of Virgil. So Sesko will probably be going up against Virgil. I can count on one hand the number of aerial duels Virgil's lost since he's been at Liverpool, to be honest. So that'll be a fun little aerial battle there. But usually Virgil doesn't lose them. If he does, he's in a race with Kerkez. Kerkez isn't particularly slow. I think Mbeumo would probably have the edge. But I think it's a shame that the fella on this side is probably Cunha. Because he would. I think Ibu, to be fair to him, is also, you know, really tall, physically dominant, good in the air and things. But he's just not quite Virgil when it comes to getting his head on things.
Do you know? I did like a massive deep dive on Liverpool as like just some like homework, and I remember the game that you played against AC Milan at the San Siro. I think Virgil scored off a corner, and I think they played.
Scored in that as well.
Did he?
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. So like, I think they played a diamond. Now United on the ball, they often build under Amorim very narrow, and one thing they did, I'm pretty sure. They played like, so I can imagine this is Sesko and this is Mbeumo. I think straight away, if Cunha sort of comes inside and you can get that 3v2 against them two there in the midfield, that was like really reminiscent of how AC Milan played against the U's in the Champions League. And I know you won the game, but it was probably the first time I'd watched a Slot team at Liverpool where I was like, the manager, I can't remember who the manager was now, but I was like, they're finding a little bit of freedom and joy. And I think they actually had Leao in the channel. And that was one where I was like, could we create something similar to that? And build really narrow? Because if your fullbacks are sort of, if the fullbacks are being asked this question of, if Cunha's being the one to drift inside, is that fullback really going to step here? And if he is going to step there, where's the width coming from? You know, is it Dorgu? Is it Dalot? Obviously, the game at Anfield last year, somehow Diogo Dalot got in behind Trent about seven or eight times.
Listen, that's an easy thing to do. Trust me, I can say that now as well.
But it's like,
good riddance.
every single time we got to the byline, it was annoying because the good crossing opportunities come in behind Trent, but we had Dalot there.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, that's not improved because the personnel's not improved. Maybe Dorgu, but I don't think he's any better of a crosser than Dalot. But I think when you build up with three sort of narrow-ish players in these positions, if you can get them in really close proximity, like Mbeumo's playing off Sesko, I think this is a really interesting dynamic of who does the midfielder latch onto? Does the midfielder actually sit a bit deeper and let this player in, or does the midfielder stand up and does the fullback come inside? And I think that's straight away one of the questions, just sort of systematically when I'm looking at just Amorim's 3-4-3 and how it looks on paper, and you just match it up against the 4-2-4 of Slot. I think straight away the tactical problem already is if United are building with Mbeumo, Sesko and Cunha basically in the middle third of the pitch, it's who's actually picking up these two players here. Yeah. And if it's not going to be the centre-backs, it has to come from the full-back or the centre midfielder.
Yeah, well, Liverpool had a little bit of that going on last time we faced us with Bruno. I think Bruno was picking up spots like, you know, within the vicinity of Trent, pinning him back. Gravenberch was a little bit torn between two posts in between. But it sounds like your classic Chelsea dynamic, to be honest, because the manager I've been most impressed by facing Arne Slot so far has been Maresca.
Yeah.
I would say he's at the edge over Slot on the two competitive occasions we faced him. I'm not counting the third because we won the league anyway. Yeah. So everyone was drunk.
But what do you think the key was to that? Was it taking advantage of the +1?
Yeah. I'd say the way in which Chelsea have managed to outnumber our midfield too, and crucially, I always think if you can make it tactically so that you are, imagine you're Gravenberch there or you're McAllister there, and you've got two decisions to make. Yeah, and you can only make one
between
basically.
These two.
Yeah, exactly. So you're always torn between two posts. And one thing Chelsea have been really good at doing is establishing that dynamic. And we've seen it with the Caicedo screamer recently, where McAllister steps out to close Gusto, I think it is, and in the last minute tries to make a step to Caicedo, but Caicedo receives the ball really nicely, takes it away from him. But that dynamic Chelsea struck last time we faced them at Anfield as well. They didn't quite score from it, but it was a constant thing. So, to be honest, I'm a little bit surprised that you're saying that that's where the game is for Man United, because I don't associate Man United with overloading the middle of the park. I thought that would be where Liverpool would get the joy.
Yeah.
And I thought, would Man United playing with wing backs, like a wing back system? Lost track of people who I'm playing with here.
Yeah. So we'll just set it up as if. So this is pretty much how United build on the ball, which is it's frustrating because when we've got the ball, it's a bit higher up the pitch because we've got four in the middle.
Yeah.
But these players are very, very attacking players. Like we do see this sort of swinging to come deeper, but most of the time they do stay up there. But as you were saying there, Bruno, in the game against Anfield, where honestly it's one of the best individual performances post Sir Alex that I've seen.
Yeah, brilliant.
That sort of position to ask the question in between. I think these in between players are going to be really interesting because we used Mount there against Sunderland, and it was for like a little bit of a different tactical reason for the press, which I'll speak about in a minute, to how Liverpool can sort of actually do the opposite. But I think if these players can play here, Cunha's a little bit more ball to feet, if that makes sense. So like he's a little bit nearer to the two midfielders than Bruno Fernandes was when he was playing here. And it'll be really interesting to see if, I think Mbeumo is a lot more of an attacker. Well, this is logical, but Mbeumo's a lot more of an attacker than Cunha.
Yeah,
so I think Cunha's like more central and wants to be just in front here, whereas Mbeumo's always looking to crash in behind. And I think, I just think maybe on the right-hand side, Salah's a little bit further forward as he has been.
This is what I was going to say. Like, when it comes to overloading the middle of the park, as you've pointed out, that is a possibility.
Yeah.
But I think with me, watching Liverpool this season, and again, by the way, Liverpool against Chelsea recently, another way Chelsea created problems for us was down this side. Because Salah doesn't defend, even though he's not delivering anymore.
Yeah.
So I think it was okay when he was not defending last season because he was breaking records. But if he's also not defending now when he's shooting like 1.5 times a match, I think his shots per 90 have halved this season. So he's not as involved, but he still doesn't defend. So would you play in a wing-back system and you've got Cunha, who, as you say, can receive the ball really nicely. Sometimes you can go up with your left-sided centre-half too, and during the attack. Whenever I watch Amorim teams, I don't watch them that often, obviously. But I feel like it's kind of a case of a lot of the time, he picks a flank to use as like, right, this week that's the highway, or this week that's the highway. Yeah. And we overload that side, and that's where the centre-half joins in, that centre-half over there stays. And I felt like last season, that's what you did with Trent. But I wouldn't say the dynamic with Liverpool has shifted so much that you shouldn't. Yeah. I would do it again, basically, is what I'm saying. If I was Amorim, I would be doing that again. Yeah.
I wanted to just mention one thing, so I'll obviously move on now into something that you've mentioned in sort of your Substack, which, again, you should really go subscribe to, especially if you're a Liverpool fan. But we defended... yeah, you should.
100%.
We defended in a 5-4-1 against Liverpool last season. But one of the things you did quite a lot, which for me was like... It was one of them moments, like Slot's so good in the games to change stuff. I think last season he used to just change stuff and I'd be like, gee, where's he whipped that out from? But like last season, you had sort of this midfield three, and you mentioned against Everton that Everton's obviously defending in a 4-5-1 or a 4-4-2, but their dynamics are pretty similar to Manchester United, where the wingers kind of slot down the sides and sometimes it becomes a back five. Now, in the game against Liverpool at Anfield last season, one thing you did really well, and all your midfielders contributed to this, is you had Curtis Jones, McAllister and Gravenberch, and they were making these really, really late runs down these half spaces, and that was sinking United back. And one thing that has been a problem at United for many, many, many years is sort of the compactness from the midfielders. I think if you think of Bruno Fernandes, the Fulham away game, every single time someone makes a run in behind the line and the back line drops, this cutback is on every single time. Like that Smith Rowe goal, Bruno Fernandes is not a natural defensive midfielder, but for some reason he's playing defensive midfield. So when someone makes this run, whether or not it'll be Gravenberch like we saw in the Everton game, or it'll be someone like Wirtz, if that player can drag Manchester United's defensive line deeper and open up that sort of edge of the D space for someone like Isak, or we've seen it for the Szoboszlai's chance at Stamford Bridge. Isak made a very similar run to drag the markers away, and I think Szoboszlai had a chance on this spot here. And I think already I look at it and go, that area in behind a Ugarte Bruno, a Casemiro Bruno, is 100% a spot where we concede probably 75% of our goals from.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think from my perspective, if I look at Man United, if you get rid of Liverpool and just simplify it a little bit, where I think, so if we just use the back three and the midfield two, get everything else out of shot, that there is what I kind of visualise as, right, you can get inroads there, you can cause, which is funny because if there's anywhere on a pitch that you don't want to give inroads, it's probably there. But I just look at the midfield two of Bruno and Casemiro. Bruno is, as you say, more offensive minded than defensive minded. Casemiro is getting on, to put it nicely. And in the back three, you've got your wide centre halves here. They obviously step out when there's things going on and things like that. But as you say, if Liverpool are running in from deep, which we do have the midfielders to do that, McAllister did it last season. Szoboszlai's a great midfield runner. Gravenberch in that Everton game.
In now, innit?
Yeah, in the Everton game, he gets a goal and an assist in that game. So, as you say, if you're doing that, if you're making those runs from deep, and Bruno's half trying to follow, and Casemiro's half trying to follow, and you, as you say, you end up with like a back seven or something.
Yeah. Well, you can flatten it out really easy. That's always been the problem.
Yeah.
If you can, like, people talk about compactness, and like, if this is compactness, so when you played Crystal Palace, they were like, there was less than 2 meters between the midfield line and the defensive line. Manchester United sometimes are caught in between doing no compactness, which is this, or too much compactness, which is basically holding hands in the box.
Yeah.
And that obviously, if you just slip a ball to the edge of the box or slip a ball in behind, you can catch 1 or 2 players off guard. I think one of the things that I noticed in the game last season was you were playing with that false 9-like player in Luis Diaz. And I think asking the question of the wide centre halves to step out was the sort of pattern of the City game, and definitely is going to be a pattern in this game, which is if Liverpool sort of have 5 across the last line and you've got sort of midfield 3 here, like that. I think if Manchester United sort of press out like this and Liverpool are building with the ball deep, it's always down to these players to follow through, and it's very rare we actually do. I think we rocked up to Anfield with Mainu Ugarte, and I'm pretty sure it was De Ligt, Maguire and Lisandro Martinez. Now that's a very defensive sort of back 3 for Manchester United. Sometimes we go with a right back there. Sometimes we play Euros a bit more of a runner on the ball. But I think for me, these sort of roles where Liverpool, they rotate a lot in midfield this season, don't they? You do a lot of mismatching and...
I think it's the plan, to be honest. I think it's a bit of a long-term plan. Slot has talked a lot about PSG and being inspired by them. And if there's one team that does do a lot of rotation in the middle of the park, it's Enrique's PSG. Yeah. So I think Liverpool are a little bit inspired by that. And we do have midfield profiles that are quite, rounded, complete and stuff. So you don't need that 6. He's the guy who stays deep. He's the guy who stays high. They can all do bits of everything. So I think you can end up getting there to that destination. But as of right now, there's still a bit of learning in there. So whether that will be the case in a high-profile game against Man United, who have got players on the break that can do it if your best defence isn't in place, and it hasn't been in place at times this season, Liverpool could get done. Manchester
United haven't won here since 2016, but I don't know how I can feel that way. Like, I don't know how I can feel that this could be something, special. I don't know why, because we've been here before. Obviously, we went to City. I had the same sort of belief that we could maybe just change the tide. But I think, would you say Liverpool are really rocked? Like,
I don't know if rocked is the word. It's not so much. I don't know if it's a confidence thing or anything like that.
Because when we played City away and we beat them 2-1, it come in their long losing streak.
Yeah.
And obviously this is the longest losing streak of Liverpool. It just feels like if you were going to play and you were going to win, this has got to be it now, surely.
Yeah. Well, I think if you lose 3 in a row, it's not a fluke. Right, that's indicative of something is wrong, basically.
Yeah.
So I don't think we can say that Liverpool are fine. There's stuff in there that Man United can exploit. I think that Liverpool's right side behind Salah, whoever plays right back, could be anyone, could be the kit man at this point. The midfield too, as we pointed out earlier, with what Maresca did and things like that, you can overload that. And Liverpool's press, because Szoboszlai is no longer in it, and because of the desire to keep a +1 at the back, you can get out, and Liverpool's build-up is not as flawless as it was, maybe because you have 2 runners now, a full-back and a bit of a different kind of number 10. So, but then going back to your point earlier, Liverpool just have really good players.
Yeah.
So
it sounds weird because I'm like thinking about, what can Liverpool do tactically? But it's also a case of, well, they've actually just got really, really good players everywhere who can kind of just win games, and that's not like a bad thing to say about Slot, because a lot of teams in Europe are built that way now, where they just have really good players and they are flexible to them players. But
yeah, I mean, one thing I really liked what Pep did against Amorim's system recently with the whole Jeremy Doku thing.
Yeah. Just kind of running across the back.
Yeah, well, he basically had a free rein, didn't he? And he basically sacrificed that side of the pitch.
Could that be Wirtz?
Well, this is what I was going to say. I have a theory that Slot was inspired by that, and and he tried it himself against Palace. It's the
yeah.
same formation, different system obviously, but Glasner plays the same formation. He played Wirtz over there. Wirtz spent virtually all of his time over here. We sacrificed that flank, and it was a disaster. Pep did that, and 2 weeks later, Slot did this with Wirtz, where everyone was over here. It's on my Substack, I did a piece on it.
Yeah.
But in practice for Liverpool, for some reason, I mean, obviously different systems and stuff, but it just didn't work. And we gave away, I think, 4 big chances, something like over 2 expected goals in one half.
If you're enjoying the video and want more tactical analysis and podcasts, please press the subscribe button below and hit the bell to enable post notifications.
I just wanted to ask you, what would your prediction be for the game, score prediction wise?
I think with Man United's system, generally I'm a little bit surprised that it's not better defensively. So I do think Liverpool will score, despite Liverpool's problems. Do I think Liverpool will concede? Probably. So I'll go 2-1 Liverpool, I think. But it's gonna be interesting because I think with Man United's system, there's a lot of square pegs round holes.
Yeah.
But we've seen a little bit more of that with Liverpool this season too. So I think both sides have similar tactical knots that they need to untangle a little bit. But Liverpool are at home, and Liverpool ultimately have a better group of 11 players. So I think Liverpool will have the edge personally. But what do you think?
I was going to say something mad like 3-1, but
to United.
Yeah.
Really, yeah.
I don't know why.
I
don't know why.
I wouldn't entirely rule it out at the moment.
It just feels
it depends
like
what your targets. It depends what your targets, I think.
Yeah, I just think like I really like Sesko, mate. Like the office is probably sick of me because like when he signed, I was like, get him. It's like,
well, could Sesko peel off?
Yeah,
this side running behind.
Well, that Højlund chance again last year where he shot it at Alisson, come from running across and in behind Trent. And I do think he can do that. That's one thing we've not seen Sesko do enough yet for United, which is like the next stage for me, which is running in behind a little bit more. He's a bit more ball to feet than I'd like him to be. But I think he's obviously got the size and the pace and the power to actually peel off and run, which is what he should be doing with space. But he's not quite got that space yet. But I think against the Liverpool team who do like to suffocate teams at home, I think the space will be there. He's a risk averse manager. Like he's a very, very safe manager. But I think in this game, I think he knows he's got to put in. If we draw and put up a good performance, it's still good. Do you know what I mean? So I think you've got to go there and you've got to play well. And I think he's often mentioned this quote when he played Man City at Sporting. He said that we cannot play the same way we did against Man City that day at Manchester United. And if I'm thinking of a guy who basically dies out on the sword, or goes for it, or he's trying to prove something, you try and play towards the opposite end of that and how you actually want to play, which is having a large majority of the ball and playing well. So, no, it's going to be a really interesting game. I'm looking forward to it, and I think it's probably one of the biggest games in probably this season. Probably the biggest game.
Well,
this
it
season.
always is, really.
Yeah, well, always. So, no, brilliant, nice one, mate. But
no worries.
Thank you very much for watching. If you did enjoy, please don't forget to like, comment and follow the channel. And please don't forget to subscribe as well, as we're nearing on 40,000. So stick around for the next episode of the Overlap Breakdown, and we will see you next week.